As we live to expect miracles, we watch what happens to a man born blind in John 9, verses 1 through 12. As he walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some were saying, "It is he." Others were saying, "No, but it is someone like him." He kept saying, "I am the man." But they kept asking him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud and spread it on my eyes and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' Then I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" And he said, "I do not know." This is the word of God for the people of God.
Of course, we know that hymn so well, and it ties very effectively into our message this morning. And the passage that you just heard read, we are expecting miracles always in our life, but we're talking about miracles during this Epiphany sermon series. So it's just such a joy to think about how God is alive and at work in our midst. We have this passage that is an interesting one because this man that was born blind never asked to be healed. Isn't that amazing how though God works so often in our life, we don't sometimes turn to God and ask God for deliverance and healing, and it just happens because of God's love and grace and mercy. And then God hopes that because of healing that some beautiful things can happen in terms of testimony and witness, as what happened with this man. Never before in the history of the world had anybody ever known of somebody born blind and healed. And if you want to read the story in its entirety, take your time and read the entire chapter of 9 in John, because it goes into great detail about what happened when the Pharisees just couldn't get their head around the fact that this man was now sighted. So surely it wasn't someone who had actually been born blind. So they talked to his parents, and they keep coming back to him and asking him about this Jesus, and saying, well, Jesus, this man can't be a prophet, because, to do work on Sunday, to mix the awful spittle that comes from your mouth and the dust of the day, that was work, and you don't do that on the Sabbath. And he would ask the man, well, why did this happen? And I love the line that he says, "I don't know exactly how it happened or why it happened. All I know is I was once blind, but now I see." And that's what we sang about a few minutes ago. And you think about it, a lot of times we are spiritually blind. Some of us have been blind since birth to a lot of things. And it takes some miraculous things to open our eyes to new ways of living and letting go of the past. We often talk about let go and let God and step into a new day. As we think about how this plays out in individual lives, I want to call on Gwen Gleckner to come forward. And Gwen, the more I thought about it, why don't we just stand here at this pulpit? I'm going to give you a microphone. I think that we might be seen better. If you don't know Gwen, Gwen is a member of our 12-person leadership board. She has been connected to Bethel Church for how many years?
On and off 20.
On and off 20 years. And she was off for a while until I sat down with her in a treatment room at the Cleveland Clinic when her daughter Lindsay was going through some challenges with having epileptic seizures. And what happened that day, Gwen, in terms of your coming back into the church?
I would have to say that realizing that someone like Pastor Mike would travel all the way to Cleveland on a snowy day for his 7:30 surgery for my daughter made me realize that church and family are more important than anything else. When I left Bethel, it was to give Lindsay an opportunity to experience God in her own way, and she's now at the Vineyard doing that very successfully. But then after Pastor Mike came and spent the day with us, realized that this needs to also be about me. It needs to be about the life that I can lead and the people that I can help and hopefully can witness to. So I chose to come back, and the miracles just keep happening.
And last Sunday, you were in church, so you heard me quote Albert Einstein, who said that life is either not miracle at all, or it's all miracle. And I think that I told you that I'm going to order my life following the latter part of what he said. I think life is all about miracle. And you told me that's the way you're really trying to live your life, as if it's all miracle. But what a challenge it is for you today, even this very Sunday. Tell us where your life is at this moment.
You know, it's kind of like the blind man seeing things for the first time. And I think that every day I wake up and I say to myself, I can live today as if life is a miracle, or I can live today as if life is not. It's kind of like the glass half full. And I choose to live every day looking for those miracles and calling those miracles what they are and not calling those miracles consequences. It is a miracle that God brought a man into my life several years ago. I never expected that, and I've truly been blessed with him. He was not churched. He was, would call himself a Christian, and he was baptized in the church. But he came to me one day and he said, "What time is church on Sunday?" And I said, 11. And I really didn't think any more about that. A little bit later I said, "Why do you ask what time is church?" He says, "Because if it's important to you, I want it to be important to me." And I thought, you know what? I think God has just given me a miracle, because this could be the man that I spend the rest of my life with. But then life gets derailed, and we have been battling a cancer scare with him. In August, he was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer. Now, the good news is it has an 85% success rate, so we are hoping for that. But it's definitely been a journey. It's been a journey that I would not want anyone to walk. But it's also opened our eyes to a lot of miracles that if we're able to see those miracles, you can. And I'll share just a couple of those with you. The day that he was diagnosed here, we brought him to the James. The day that he was diagnosed, we decided to go have dinner, which is one of our favorite things to do. And we're sitting at the Bonefish at the bar. And we're kind of engrossed in conversation like this, because it's very personal when you're trying to decide what do you do with a cancer scare and where do you take this. And there's not very many people in the bar, but this young man walks in and sits right beside us. And at the appropriate time, we turn and he engages us in conversation. He says, I can't help but overhear what you're saying. There obviously is a cancer scare. I just want you to know how wonderful the James is. I am an ENT specialist, and I treat people for cancer at the James. And I thought, well, my goodness, here we are talking about this. We have an hour and a half of free consultation from this doctor talking about Larry's throat cancer. And as he left, I said to Larry, you know, you can't doubt there's a God when he brings an angel and lets him sit right beside us.
So this tumor is at the base of his tongue. It's about the size of a quarter. Is that what you said?
It is.
Larry lives in Toledo, but there's a special machine, and I saw it. It's an amazing, elaborate radiation machine that has to be so precise because it's so penetrating and, hopefully kills the tumor, but it also kills a lot of other things in the process. And Larry, as I was with him in the early stages, and I said, we're going to go through this together, and we're going to pray together. And I've tried to do that all along the way. But everything that was promised medically didn't really unfold the way it was hoped for. Tell us about the disappointments.
Even though it's stage 4 cancer and an 85% success rate, radiation and chemo has a way of, as Pastor Mike said, of killing everything in your body. But the buildup of that radiation is supposed to be the worst in the 2 to 3 weeks after the chemo and radiation ends, which was in November. And unfortunately, Larry has just had one challenge after another with not healing the way that he should, not being able to take in enough calories. And then on the heels of all of that, having to succumb to a peg tube, which he was so hopeful that he would not have to do. He's been in and out of the hospital during the month of January with 2 strains of pneumonia and then, of course, a staph infection. So it's been really challenging, and we've had to really rely on our faith. Oftentimes feeling like you're rappelling without a net. But you've got to rely on your faith every day to get through it and just hope that you won't fall.
Describe how delicate and hard it was to put anything in his mouth because of all of the blisters and the sores that toward the end now, or at least maybe for the last couple months, it's hard to even swallow water.
Right.
Everything was such a pain. There was this window of maybe, 20 minutes where he could, by taking medications, he could ready his throat to absorb something. And, I just couldn't believe the challenge and the pain that he would have to go through to have something, to ingest anything. And today he still has to, it's hard to just to swallow anything.
Take anything in. He really can't take anything in. When you are without nutrition for that long of a period and you're not exercising or anything, the atrophy that happens in your body also takes effect in your throat. So, Pastor Mike's going to the very dark side of all of this, and it has been a challenge, and the beauty of it, though, is that I don't think that it's tested our faith at any moment. It's only made our faith stronger. And to see him come from where he was, what time is church on Sunday, to today just being immersed in everything that he can to make sure that he's walking that path and relying on God. And, we're doing daily devotions. And can I share the cards?
Absolutely.
So another God thing is we were sitting at the James, and again, in a room where we think that, we've got a little quiet spot, and the whole room is empty, and lo and behold, 2 people come up and sit right beside us again. This lady and man Larry and I were talking about things that we need to look forward to. You've got to have something in the end to look forward to so that we're not just constantly dwelling on the negative things of every day. So we're talking about Mexico. He loves to fish in Mexico. And she leans over and says, have you ever fished in Cabo? Well, Cabo is one of his favorite places to fish. So it starts the conversation around fishing in Cabo, and her husband has described his cancer exactly as Larry's cancer was, and he's 3 weeks ahead of us. So we have an instant friend that we're able to call and really rely on and say, okay, this is happening. Is this normal? Or what did you do here? Or sharing recipes that would be easy for him to digest. And they invited us over to their home one day, and she gave us these cards. And she said, my daughter made these cards for Mike, her husband, so that every day when you have a treatment, you can actually watch the treatment go down, and then you start over when the healing starts. And there are 35 cards here. We were always amazed at how often the card just speaks directly to you, whether it was Larry or whether it was me. So I'd like to share a couple of those with you. Sometimes we looked at that card and went, wonder what that meant. But it didn't really matter. What really mattered was the fact that someone had done this as an act of agape. And as it turned out, she was a Methodist, and she had been a part of the Emmaus community. And in my phone, I have her phone number, and it says, my new best friend, which is a phrase from the Emmaus community. So this is day 15, and we're kind of tired, and things are getting tough. And the Bible verse from 2 Corinthians said, so we don't look at the troubles we can see now. Rather, we fix our gaze on things that cannot be seen. For the things we see now will soon be gone, and the things we cannot see will last forever. It's those types of things that really gave us hope, really gave Larry hope. And for me to be able to witness to him to say, you know what, this is just a phase. This is not what God wants for us. This is something that we're going to look back on and say, we're glad we walked this journey. We're thankful that it's over. But it's not what God wants for us. I'm convinced. And then, of course, he gives me those special ones, because as a caretaker, that's also a hard journey. And Jesus said, come to me, all you who are weak and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. From Matthew. So, there's lots. You're welcome to share any of these, but to also think that someone who doesn't really even know me, her daughter put these together for Larry and I, but for someone who doesn't even know us to be affected by what we've been through, and hopefully the opportunity, as I say every day with my daughter Lindsay, hopefully this gives us an opportunity to witness to others. So Larry, being tested in his faith, gets these types of messages, and again gives me just the opportunity to witness to him. What is the price of 5 canaries, 2 copper coins? Yet God does not forget a single one of us, and the very hairs on your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are more valuable to God than a whole flock of canaries.
And I might add that the timing of these were so beautiful, and that couple was your next angel that came in to your life. But these were such amazing lifelines, because as they're receiving them, things are not getting better, but things are getting worse. So after the 2-week period when the chemo was over and the radiation was over and the buildup was supposed to be leaving his body, instead of getting better, he was a part of a small percentage of people that got worse. So we were hoping that by Christmas we'd be home free, and by Christmas he was awful and gaunt and challenged. His whole day is consumed with, how do I get through the next hour, and how do I get to the next opportunity to take something into my system. He tried so hard to not get a feeding tube, and thinking that would be a strong-willed thing to do. And then in the end, the doctors say, well, we probably should have put a feeding tube in now in retrospect because you lost all that nutrition. And part of the healing process is to get enough nutrition in your system. So I would visit. I can remember one time in the hospital and, always trying to be encouraging. And Larry just felt like nothing good was happening. Yet I was amazed at his spirit. There was a nurse that came in, and he was just so kind and attentive to her. And she walked out, and I said, Larry, knowing how miserable you are, that's God at work in you to be able to muster up kindness and grace like you did. And I remember him turning it to me, and he said, Pastor, I want to have the faith that you and Gwen have. Having not grown up in the church, he's just heard the stories, and he's heard our stories. But, as we try to say, hang on, because there's a silver lining. The good things are going to be happening, and the good things don't come. And today, we're better finally, but still can't swallow. And are the sores finally starting to go away?
Sores are gone away. Well, pretty much gone away. You get rid of one and you get another one, right? He's getting better every day, and he's getting stronger.
And we talked to
in
the midst of our gloom and doom and frustration because things weren't working. Gwen had asked for the lead doctor to come and see her, and I happened to be there when he arrived. And he gave, not only did he give us hope of saying that it might take another 6 months, but he looked at me and looked at her, and he said, the spiritual part of this is every bit as important as any other part. He was a godly man, and you and I felt stronger after he left, and that might have been one of those turnaround days. Seems like things have slowly started to get a little better after he came on the scene and shared that with us. When Paul writes in 1 Thessalonians, he writes to rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of Christ Jesus for you and me. That's hard to do, friends, in the midst of that kind of pain when things aren't working out. To actually rejoice in it, to give thanks in it, because you know that God has not forgotten us. And we're on a different timetable. And in the end, it's always going to be good. So Proverbs tells us to trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Acknowledge his ways, and he'll make your paths straight. You've been doing that, Gwen. God bless you. And what a pleasure it's been to see the faith that Gwen has shown. Things like this challenge relationships. A lot of times you don't make it through this kind of pain because it's hard to be pleasant to people that are close to you and are trying to take care of you. Sometimes you don't want to hear all the encouraging words. You've been there. You know that. So you have to rely and trust and acknowledge and say, God, I don't understand, but thy will be done. I kept praying that with her. We know that your will be done. Give us the strength to get to there, to get to closer to the end of the journey. I think of something else that Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians when he said, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. When you go through things like this, you really see that. He'll end by saying, as I become weak, you become strong, because I have to turn everything over to you. We could talk about how you have to relinquish control, because you want to do everything you can, and you're a good businesswoman, and you're in control of your own business, and you're trying to be in control of your daughter who's had special needs issue, and it's worked a lot. But then all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore.
Life is actually easier when you don't try to take control. Although I do have that problem. You're right, it does.
So you let go, and you let God. And you see miracles happen. The thing I love about Gwen and Larry is now they know that they're seeing these, they've seen these miracles all along the way, and they're going to see some big ones as long as they can stay the course. So we want to be praying for them because good days are happening and better days are coming, and the witness becomes powerful. And I keep telling Larry, you've got a story that you're going to share, sometimes just individually with someone, as they are going to want to give up, and they're going to want to throw in the towel, and have every reason to give up and throw in the towel. And you're going to be able to tell them, hang on a little longer. God's going to send some lifelines, and you'll get through it. There's victory in Jesus. And if it isn't on this side, believe me, it's on the other side. God bless you, Gwen. God.